everyone, happy Friday. I feel like I should forewarn everyone, I'm sick again. I'm sick again. My kids are in preschool. They catch everything. And so it is what it is. Like at least I still have my voice for now. And it might sound a little nasally, but we'll just go with it. So
I don't want to jinx myself, but I'm actually surprised I'm not sick because I just, spent the last few days traveling, and every time I take a plane or whatever, get on a plane, I get sick. And I
oh
probably
yeah.
just jinxed it, but I feel really good right now.
Planes are like germ, they're just everywhere. It's like,
Yeah.
have you seen those videos where they'll test like the tray on the seat
Oh.
and it's just like it's so nasty. But we
Hmm.
had like it's been hot here and then it went from being like hot and humid to being it got down to like the 30s overnight, which is really cold for Florida. And
Yeah.
then it was like that for like a week and maybe that had something to do with it because I feel like every time the temperature shifts like that, I get sick. But anyhow, hopefully I get better soon because I'm sick of this shit. So, okay, I've got to catch you up because you've been out of town, haven't really been looking at the news, and there's so much happening.
Yeah.
So, first off, to follow up on our UAP episode where we are talking about how there were UAPs and they're spotted over these American bases in the UK that are nuclear bases. Well, now there are a ton of reports all coming out of New Jersey, including above Trump's Bedminster golf course. So these drones have been like flying above the golf course, which is near a military site, um, for days on end. And I guess what people were saying, because all of these people that live there are uploading videos. There's so many video that you can see of this. They're saying the drones come out at night and they will stay in like the same place for hours and hours and hours. But as soon as the sun comes up, they're gone. And this one woman was like freaking out. She's like, I woke up in the middle of the night and I peeked out my window just to see. And she's like, and yep, it was still there. Same spot, 5 hours now, which is like just crazy. So, anyhow, like even the local news stations in New Jersey are all talking about it. And I found one clip that I want to play for you where she kind of summarizes what's going on. If I can figure out my new phone, how to take the volume off. Oh my gosh. If anyone has an iPhone and you're gonna get the new iPhone, just beware. They have like really messed things up. Oh my gosh. Okay, here we go.
Charity and Candace, the FAA has placed a temporary
Oh, let's try this one more time, then I'm giving up.
restriction on drone flights over Picatinny Arsenal and over Trump National Golf Course in Bedminster. When these drones were first spotted 2 weeks ago, the Morris County Prosecutor's Office said that they posed no known threat to public safety. But people want to know, what the heck are they and what are they doing? It's normal to see red and green lights in December, unless they're coming from mysterious drones in the night sky.
It's kind of unsettling. They're not up for 15 minutes. They're up for hours. Some are very big, probably size of a car.
Mike Walsh says he's seen hundreds of them over the past 2 weeks from his Randolph backyard and has the video to prove it.
They kind of go slow. They come towards you, then they'll change direction a little. They're all going different ways.
The drones have been spotted all over Morris County. Morristown police sent an alert to residents Sunday saying they are aware of drone activity and that if a drone crashes or lands, do not approach or handle it. The FBI's Newark field office would only say it is working with other law enforcement agencies to figure out what's going on, but at the moment doesn't have enough information to share.
A lot of people want to know what's going on. I think more people are coming around to that. Oh, this is going on and maybe it's not good.
Nancy Reed didn't want to show her face on camera, but says she's seen the drones every night since November 18th.
I can see them right out my bedroom window. I can watch them. Last night was about 5:30, so it was earlier. But it's normally anywhere between like 7:30 and 10:30, they're out here. Never during the day. Nobody ever sees them during the day.
One thing she hasn't seen is the normal air traffic she's used to, and she doesn't understand why.
We're in the fly pattern going to like Morristown Airport and Newark, and we used to see a lot of planes coming back and forth. You don't see them anymore.
Okay, so that's what's happening in New Jersey. And I guess there was another news clip that I was listening to. They said that the FBI is involved in opening up an investigation because I guess when it's airspace, it's like the FBI has to get involved, or that's what the news had said. And then they also said the FAA was like closing down flights. And I don't know, like it had me worried though that it was over Trump's golf course. I'm like, what's going on? Are they trying to take him out? Is this like an assassination attempt? Is it Project Bluebeam? You know what I mean? It's like, what is going on?
Well, the weird thing to me is when she said they're in a flight zone, right? And the flights that are normally going back and forth aren't happening. So there's all these drone sightings, and yet there's no normal air traffic. So what the fuck is going on?
Right. It's just, it's so strange. And it's like all of a sudden, too, because people were talking about this stuff in the UK. And now, like, my whole TikTok feed is this. And no one really seems to care. Everyone's just like, yeah, whatever, like UAPs, aliens, whatever. Like, do I still have to go to work today? Like, that's kind of like the overall vibe. But I saw one video, and I cannot believe I didn't think about this when we did the last UAP episode. But I see this video, and it's like multiple drones, right? Or drones, UAP, whatever the hell they are. And they're all flying super close together and like in unison, like almost like dancing. And I was like, oh my God, that looks exactly like the drone show at Disney Springs. So we just saw it. It's a new show. And I went with my friend, and we were both looking at each other and we were like, those are drones? Like, because it was like orbs of light. And they all form to make these like very incredible images in the sky. And we were blown away. We were like, holy shit, we didn't know drones could do that. And so now I'm like, well, maybe they are really drones. And if Disney has that type of a capability, then I'm sure our military does. So now I'm like, yeah, Project Bluebeam. I mean, I don't know. I'm going back and forth every day. What do you think?
Well, that's the thing because when I think of a drone, I don't associate a drone with like a plasma-like movement,
Right.
or orbs of light that come together and separate. Like that's not what comes to my mind with the word drone. So I'm having a very hard time with the idea of these things people are seeing actually being drones. You know what I'm saying? Like it just
No, I
doesn't.
know that's what I was thinking with the last episode. But then when I was at that Disney show, like you don't see the actual drone, you just
Mhm.
see the lights. And like,
Okay.
I don't know how they do it. It must be like small drones. I don't know, but you don't see them, you don't hear them. And so it just made me think like, if a company like Disney has technology like that, then certainly our military has technology that could make it seem like plasma or orbs of light
Right.
or whatever. But I still don't know because it's not just happening in New Jersey. Like people have been seeing this everywhere. And one hot spot is St. Lucie County in Florida, where I mean, every day I'm seeing people post videos, and these will be low. They'll be like in the tree line sometimes. And I sent it to you. I took a video myself. And I wasn't going to talk about this on the last episode, but this is the third time I've seen this, okay? The first two times were like before all this stuff happened in the UK. And like the last time I was looking at it and I'm like, what's that airplane doing? Like I thought it was an airplane, but then I noticed as I was staring at it, like it wasn't moving at all. It was stationary. And I was like, well, there's no way that that is a star because it's too low. And like as I'm thinking that, an airplane flies over it. So I'm like, okay, yeah, it's definitely too low to be a star. And I got out my phone and I recorded it. And when you're recording, you can see like if the image is blurry
Yeah.
as you're recording, everything looked fine. I go to play it back and the whole thing is like glitched and blurry. And I'm like, what the hell? Now I don't have proof. So that happened. And then the other night, I'm like in the backyard and I see something similar and it's really low. And I'm like, that can't be a star. So I get out my phone and I zoom in and you saw it. It like if I were to describe plasma, Isn't that kind of what you would think of?
Yes, like that video totally tripped me out when you sent that to me because there was no way that was a star. It was almost like it was moving in and out of itself. Like
Yeah.
it was changing shape and and it was it was not a star. There's no fucking way that was a star. And your video, I also was like, that's not a drone. Like, how can that be a drone? It was
Right.
just like a blob that was moving, and like the illumination would change in it. It,
Mm-hmm.
it was just
Yeah,
weird. Yeah.
it did. It like would shape shift and the colors would
Hmm.
change. And that's very different from like the dancing drone type thing that we saw like over the Capitol building. So I don't think they're the same things. And I think there is something going on because what I sent you, I've seen other people post very similar things, like people that have telescopes that are always looking in the sky. And they're like, yeah, no, planets don't do that. Like they don't
Hmm.
morph and shapeshift and all this weird stuff. And it was just weird that I was able to catch it on my phone because usually the phone will get like glitchy.
Well, let me ask you this. Because you live near a flight path, right?
Yes.
Yes. Have you noticed any difference in air traffic?
I don't know. Like now that you ask that, I'll pay attention. Because I haven't really like thought about that or paid attention to it, so I can't really give you an answer. But what I have noticed is remember how I used to tell you like I'd see the chemtrails
Hmm.
nonstop every day, all day, every day, unless it was a holiday, right?
Yeah.
Um, then after the solar eclipse, no chemtrails. I started seeing chemtrails again. And like, it's like funny. Like when I take my kids to school and I'm like, are they trying to paint an image in the sky? Because I mean, it's like not even like they're trying to hide it. It's like crisscrossed
Yeah.
lines, like they're playing tic-tac-toe or something. So I have noticed that, but I'll pay attention to the planes and let you know. But here, like if you post anything, people are like, yeah, SpaceX, but this wasn't even in the direction of SpaceX. Like SpaceX is on the other coast in the other direction of this video I took. So I don't know. It's one of those things. It's like no one can really give an answer, but yet no one really believes it because our
Yeah.
mind, I think, just can't even conceive what it might be, you know?
Yeah.
But okay, so here's the other thing. So speaking of SpaceX and all of that in Florida, is it a coincidence that at this same time, the US Space Force just announced that they're going to be doing emergency response exercises at Port Canaveral, which is normal. Of course, they're going to do those types of exercises, right? Well, the article in Florida Today says, quote, don't be alarmed at sightings of emergency responders, military personnel, or simulated incidents near US Space Force installations over the next few days. Like, no big deal. It says these exercises are pre-planned and part of a routine readiness training. There will be no threat to the public, and all safety precautions will be in place to ensure minimal disruption to surrounding areas, end quote. Um, that like just the fact that it's like, don't be alarmed, we're gonna,
Nothing to see here.
yeah, it's a simulated incident. If you see something crazy, it's just simulated. Like, we're just practicing Project Bluebeam. Just go about your day. I mean, what the heck? And so they're saying that these activities are like, a test to improve operations for national security requirements. And then it says, they're going to support these national security requirements amid great power competition and evolving global threats. So I'm like, okay, are they planning for World War III? Like, I take everything, so, I have to go down the rabbit hole with it. But doesn't that sound a little sketchy?
Yeah, especially because it's the Space Force. And
Yes.
so I don't know if you saw this, but on Wednesday, Trump announced his pick to lead NASA. And it's this guy, Jared Isaacman. And like, honestly, I didn't even know that the head of NASA was a federally appointed position, but I
I
guess
didn't
it is.
either. Yeah.
I've never heard of this guy before. So I looked into his history and it's totally insane. He's he's a billionaire businessman he started this aerospace defense company called Draken International when he was 28 years old. It became the world's largest private air force. Okay. So this guy was a pilot, and then he logged enough flight hours to become one of the very few like non-military private citizens that gets to fly military jets. And then back in 2017, he makes this $280 million deal with our government to train Air Force pilots. A few months ago, he partnered with SpaceX and he became the first non professional astronaut to complete a spacewalk. And this guy's made two trips to orbit and he's funding the missions himself. So I guess he's like testing new spacesuits or something. So when Trump makes this announcement, Jared posts a response on X. And I want you to listen to what he said about our upcoming like ventures into space, okay? He said, quote, "I'm honored to receive President Trump's nomination to serve as the next administrator of NASA. Having been fortunate to see our amazing planet from space, I am passionate about America leading the most incredible adventure in human history. On my last mission to space, my crew and I traveled farther from Earth than anyone in over half a century. I can confidently say this second space age has only just begun. Space holds unparalleled potential for breakthroughs in manufacturing, biotechnology, mining, and perhaps even pathways to new sources of energy. There will inevitably be a thriving space economy, one that will create opportunities for countless people to live and work in space. At NASA, we will passionately pursue these possibilities and usher in an era where humanity becomes a true spacefaring civilization," end quote.
Well, holy shit. Okay,
Yeah.
I saw this guy's like spacewalk and I was cracking up because you know how like when we see people at like the International Space Station or whatever, they've got their full on gear with the helmet and everything else. This guy like is supposedly further than any of them go and he like pops out of the spaceship and he has on like this like it looked like a silver jumpsuit. And like everyone was joking. They're like, "Oh, so you can wear tracksuits in space now?" And like it was just funny, but I also think it's interesting all of these billionaires that are into this
Yeah.
stuff. You
Mhm.
know, like it makes me think of I was looking it up. Robert Bigelow is the billionaire that bought Skinwalker Ranch, where there's all these like weird, alien,
Yeah.
ghost, whatever going on. But he's also the founder of Bigelow Aerospace, which is one of these,
Hmm.
private contractors that has access to like all kinds of stuff. And so I just think it's interesting. And I think it's interesting that Trump is like surrounding himself with them.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you, okay? Because I want you to tell me what your conspiracy brain thinks about this. So, remember, Trump's the one who created Space Force, right? It was when he was in office that Space Force even came about. So now he's coming back in office. And leading up to that, for the past year, there's all this weird shit happening with these UAP hearings. It's exposing stuff that we never knew about, right? And it's not just, aliens or UFOs anymore. It's this whole different ball game with the all domain anomalies that can go from the air to the water. They create this whole new organization with Arrow. Now there's all this talk of interstellar beings and the drones, that are they drones or are they not drones? Who knows? And now Trump brings this guy into his administration who's the only private astronaut to ever go to the moon, right? Twice. And he's talking about people living and working on the moon and everything with like Project Bluebeam. I have to think Trump knows what the fuck is going on, right? Like, don't you think he's ahead of the game? Like, isn't
Yeah.
this all so coincidental, you know?
Yeah. I think he is so far ahead of the game. Just like I've said before, he's playing a game of chess, and I'm sure, he's way far ahead. And like, I remember when people were laughing when he created Space Force. But
I was
now look at
laughing.
everything that's happening. Exactly. So it's like, yeah, I'm sure back then he knew, you know, way more than we even know now about what's going on. But here's the other thing that's interesting because they had those UAP hearings, and I've been seeing a lot of video from, all these different people like Greer that, have worked on these different projects. And they're like, Congress is never going to get the answers. And the reason why is because the government, the military was really smart. And instead of them doing everything on government facilities, they're hiring it out to all these private contractors. So that way they don't have to disclose anything because it's technically not the government. So they think that all this missing money, these trillions of dollars that the Pentagon has lost, is like funneled to all these private contractors so that there's like no record and no one can do a freedom of information request or anything for any of it. And so, obviously Trump would probably know that being that he was president, and maybe that's why he's getting these people on board. Like, I don't know. There's so many which ways my brain goes with this.
Yeah,
Um,
because now you've got this guy and Elon Musk, right? And they're
yeah,
both heavily involved in space technology. So, like, there's got to be something more to the picture than what we're being told. And
right.
Trump's got to know about it.
And then Trump did bring it up on Joe Rogan, which was kind of stupid because he brought it up but then he didn't really like say anything. He's just like, yeah, there's a lot of pilots that think there's something there. But now I'm wondering, like, was he trying to prepare us for something? But then I'm also wondering, like, is Space Force like on his side? And is this all this technology they've built over the last few years? And now that he is going to be president, we're seeing it all come out. They're testing it. Because I brought it up to my mom last night. I showed her my video. I'm like, Mom, like, I saw a UAP because she's so into this stuff and like she's obsessed with Skinwalker Ranch. And she was like, yeah, I don't really know if that's UAP. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like an orb that's shape shifting. She's like, yeah, but that's not what they're seeing at Trump's golf course. They're seeing drones. It's drones for sure. I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, it's drones. They're getting prepared for Trump to come in. Like, you don't have to worry. It's like the good guys. They're all, and she was like totally unfazed. And so I have no idea what she's talking about, but she just seemed like, yeah, this is no big deal. Everything's fine. Like, don't freak out. So I'm like, all right,
Wow.
maybe it is Trump and the good guys like testing out all their cool new technology. Who knows?
Well, I hope so, because that would be a positive alternative to Project Bluebeam, right?
That would be a plot twist. Maybe they are Project Bluebeam. Who knows? I don't know
Yeah.
what I believe anymore. I'm telling you.
We just like it changes all the time with just more and more weird more weird shit happening. And
Yeah.
speaking of which, totally not related, but at the same time, in my mind, relative, because yesterday the European Space Agency launched two satellites. Okay. And these satellites are basically going to be able to create an artificial solar eclipse that can last for 6 hours so that they can study the sun's outer atmosphere. Like, I'm sorry, this is crazy, okay? Because these satellites, I guess they're going to travel for like the next 4 months and be varying distances to and from Earth, and then establish this elliptical orbit over the Earth. And then at some point, they separate and then they enter a tandem orbit where they're 500 feet apart. And I guess this is supposed to be the first time in history that spacecraft will fly in a precise formation and then align perfectly in front of the sun so that they cast a shadow from one satellite to the other, which is how they'll block the sun's light and mimic a natural solar eclipse. Like, is this crazy or what?
It's completely crazy. Like my first question is like, okay, so every country on this planet is just cool with Europe like blocking the sun for multiple hours.
Yeah.
What? I mean, how outrageous. And like, okay, so this was actually conspiracy with the last solar eclipse. And I think we might have touched on it a little bit, but people did not feel like the last solar eclipse was a real eclipse because there's tons of video. Everyone can just go look it up. During the eclipse, the people that were videoing it and taking photos, you could see the moon next to the eclipse. And they were like, this doesn't even make sense. And it wasn't even like a full moon, it was like a new moon. And so everyone's like, this isn't right. Like something weird is happening. And then people were saying behind the sun, you could see like another planet or object. And then after the eclipse, everyone's talking about how the sun seems so much brighter and whiter than it was prior to the eclipse, which I agree. Like I'm someone that does like the whole sun gazing thing and I can't even like look at the sun now. Um, so anyhow, like all these conspiracies were going on around the time of the eclipse and people were looking up patents. And there are patents out there for like an artificial sun and an artificial moon using satellites.
Wow.
But even I was like, okay, these conspiracies are a little far-fetched, you know? And of course, like the mainstream makes these people seem like total whack jobs for even suggesting such a thing. But yet, a year later, here we are, and they're publicly stating that they can fake an eclipse. Like,
Mm.
just think about that. You're gonna block the sun from the entire Earth for multiple hours with a satellite. Like, if they can do that, what the hell else can they do? And this is Europe. This isn't even the US and like
Mhm.
NASA, SpaceX. It just has me questioning like everything that I think I know about our planet, the solar system, the technology we have. You know? Like, how
Yeah,
does
and
this even
especially
happen?
right. And then what was it? Last week we were talking about how they've suddenly discovered a ninth planet.
Yeah. Yes. I
So,
mean, I feel like we are just completely in the dark
mhm.
and have no idea what's going on. And part of what's happening now, like, makes me wonder, are we being conditioned to get used to this idea that there's all kinds of weird shit that we can't even fathom? And maybe that's part of what's happening with these UAPs. I mean, I don't know. And to me, it's like, okay, you're really going to block out the sun for multiple hours. Who knows the effect that that could have? But why? Like, is there some other reason? I know they're going to test the atmosphere, but maybe it's because the solar flares are going to get worse. And they're testing that. Like, what are they not telling us? Because this just it just doesn't smell right. Like, there's got to be more to the story for them to do this, and everyone's just like, oh yeah, no big deal. Go ahead.
Yeah, cool science. You know,
Yeah.
but why?
Right. I know. I feel like there's so much happening. Like that's kind of the mentality. Everyone's just like, World War III,
Yeah.
UAPs, Like there's just so much. We're like almost numb to it all. And maybe that's the point. I don't know. Okay.
Hmm.
Completely shifting gears because this is another crazy story. Um, so United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was shot point blank on the street in New York City. Like just out of the blue, like boom, happens early in the morning. So obviously, like this was planned. He was assassinated. That's what their theory is right now, according to the mainstream media. And, everyone, like I saw right after this happened, there's all these theories out there. And then later on in the day, it came out that this guy was being investigated by the DOJ because United Healthcare, I guess, did a whole bunch of acquisitions that consolidated the market and basically made them a monopoly. So violated antitrust laws, just like what we're seeing with Google. So 2 weeks before this whole DOJ probe was supposed to go public, Thompson, the guy who was killed, sold $15.1 million of his United Healthcare shares. And in addition, you had United Health Group Chairman Stephen Helmsley, Chief People Officer Aaron McSweeney, and Chief Accounting Officer Tom Ruse sold a combined 101.5 million in shares. And Helmsley, I guess, netted just shy of 85 million. So they all know this is going to go public, that the DOJ is investigating them. And they get together, they sell their shares, and then the stock price plummets,
Mhm.
which is like, I mean, I'm not an expert in this, but that's insider trading, right? Like, you can't
That
do
is,
that.
yeah, yeah. The only reason I know that is because I watched that Martha Stewart documentary on Netflix.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. My friend tells me this, and I'm like, that's what Martha Stewart went to jail for.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Okay, the irony of it too is this guy was on his way to speak at an investor conference in New York. So he just
Mhm.
like completely screwed over all the shareholders, but now he's going to go give like a speech at this investor conference. So I feel like someone was really trying to send a clear message by taking him out like on the way to the conference. And just think about like all of the, not just all the shareholders, but like all of the employees who have their pensions or their 401ks and they don't know anything about what's going on. And now their pension and 401k is completely like in the shitter because of what they did. And they're saying that, let's see, it was the International Business Times. They said that in October, the California Public Employee Retirement System, which is, I guess, the largest public pension fund in the US, they joined a lawsuit and filed an amended complaint seeking a jury trial against Thompson and the other executives because it completely like tanked their whole pension fund. It's just crazy. It's like you wake up one day and your retirement is like totally screwed. Um, so not only that, but the New York Post was reporting that earlier this year, United Health was hit by one of the largest healthcare data breaches in US history. I guess the company estimates that as many as one third of Americans' private data, potentially including social security numbers, were compromised in the ransomware attack. So this whole thing is like a shit show. Like he had a lot of enemies. There's no
Yeah.
telling who actually killed him.
Well, that's the question. Who actually killed him? Because I guess they still haven't been able to ID the shooter, but the police ended up with this surveillance video footage of a possible suspect. And from what I remember, like reading, the guy shot like three times and then got on an e-bike and then just like rode away through Central Park. Well, it's 3 days later and they still can't find this guy. But I guess law enforcement told AP News that the bullet casings they found at the scene had the words deny, defend, depose written on them. So clearly it's a hit. Like this, it was a purposeful, intent that they were trying to assassinate this guy. But don't you find it strange that they haven't been able to find him?
Yeah, in New York City where there's
Right.
cameras everywhere.
Everywhere. Yes.
Yeah, so here's the other thing. Two things actually. So City Bike was, I guess, the bike that he was riding. So this guy, I think it was on X. I don't know if he owns City Bike or is an analyst for them or whatever, but I guess City Bike like scrapes data consistently. So he says he's able to go and see exactly who this guy is and like where he went and everything else. And it's like, okay, the media's not talking about that. The police aren't
Mhm.
talking about that. But then the other thing is my husband saw the video of the shooting. I'm like, what? He's like, oh yeah, you can see everything, including the guy's entire face. And it's like a whole process because you have to go to like some type of like a Reddit account and then like in the comments people are posting it, but you have to like screen record it because it gets taken down. But yeah, he saw the whole thing. He's like, there was a woman right there, like right next to the guy when it happened, and she just like slowly walked away as this guy's being shot. And yeah, it shows the guy's like whole face. So it's like obviously the police have to have this. For whatever reason, they're not releasing it publicly. Um,
Well, I think they did. I think they released the footage and then there's this
oh,
big
did
like
they?
yeah, and there's this big conspiracy that like the guy looks like an actor. I can't remember the name and I didn't write it down, but there's like multiple conspiracies of like, oh, it's not even the same person because there's two images, and people are saying, well, the backpack is different in one image than it is in another, and the jacket's not the same in one image as it is in the other. And they just picked a random guy with a hoodie and a backpack on. But like it's just one video where he's smiling and having some kind of conversation. I mean, he's a good looking guy, I can say that much.
Well, okay. What's weird to me I mean, I guess it's not weird. It's more sad because this guy was married and had kids, no matter how bad of a person he was. But like the temperature on TikTok is everyone's like, he deserves it, you know? And I guess one of the writers for the New York Times even posted something that said, like, this is why we want insurance executives dead or healthcare
Oh,
executives dead. Like, people are being really nasty about it because, you know, everyone's been screwed over by insurance. But I just feel bad for like his wife and kids that that's the reaction. Like, oh, you know, he deserved it. But anyhow, you mentioned the deny, defend, oppose that was written on the casings.
mhm.
So I guess that links to some book that, or the words are a little bit different for the book, but it has to do with like revolution. So for some reason, I keep getting like shifted over to like the lunatic lefty side of TikTok that have like Trump derangement syndrome. And they're all like, you guys, this was a battle cry for revolution. And we're going to make sure like Trump doesn't get in. And like, they're taking this and somehow twisting it into like Trump bad. We must stop him. Like it's so ridiculous. And I don't know why I keep ending up on this side of TikTok because it's like, I don't even want to comment because these people are so fucking nuts. They'll probably like personally come after me. So there's that. Then when you were gone, South Korea was under martial law for like not long at all, but they went under martial law and like this was all over TikTok. Everyone was going crazy. The only reason why I wanted to bring it up today was because on this lunatic lefty side of TikTok, same thing as what they're doing with this bullet casing. They're like trying to say, oh, what happened in South Korea with martial law, this is what Trump's planning on doing. And
Of
he's going
course.
to just start arresting all these politicians, and we're going to be under martial law. So we have to stop him. And I think what's happening is like, they know the Trump administration is going to go after the deep state. And yeah, they might arrest, they might prosecute. Like, we're all hoping they do, right? Like, prosecute the people for crimes that were committed. So I feel like the left is all it's almost like predictive programming. Like they're trying to set the stage and say, hey, if the Trump administration starts arresting people or even just firing other politicians, it's going to be like South Korea and we're going to be under martial law and we need to remove him because that means he's a dictator. And so I just feel like they used it almost like it was staged to like make everyone fear Trump and expect him to go and do the same exact thing. And so that's the only reason why I wanted to mention it today, because with that, and then with what's happening in France and Germany's economies in shambles, it's like all of these events, they are finding a way to take it and twist it and turn it into making everyone afraid of Trump. And like the thing that they're saying is they're like, look at World War II. The world was in chaos and people were broke, just like now. And Hitler came in and said that he would fix everything. And like, that's what Trump is saying. And therefore, Trump is Hitler. Like, this is literally what they're talking about. And people are buying into it. It's crazy.
It's absolutely crazy. And I have to comment on something you said because this was like personally crazy for me. So the whole France thing, like I was literally there when it happened. And if you don't know what happened, basically the government collapsed and they took it to a vote on Wednesday night and they the prime minister had to step down and so they currently have no functioning government. They have no economy. Like it's something that I guess it's been at least 60 years since they've even had someone step down from that position. But it was so crazy because I was in Paris and we're like waiting at this gigantic, frightening traffic circle like I've never been in my life. And it's like a nine lane fucking circle. It's crazy. But anyway, there's all of a sudden all these police vehicles go by. And it's not just police cars, it's like the big armored vehicles. And I sent you the video. It went on for like a minute. There was probably 30, 40 of these vehicles just loaded with cops. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I wonder where they're going. I wonder what's happening. Well, that's what was happening, was like the collapse of the government. And so it was crazy. And now people are calling for Macron to step down, which they've been doing for a while anyway. But with now this collapse of government, like the people of France don't want him in power. He's refusing to step down. He gave a press conference last night where he was basically like, no, you know, my term is a 5-year mandate and I'm going to stay here until the very end. And so I guess he's done in 2027. So that's what, 2 more years of this guy. And he hasn't announced a replacement yet. But tomorrow, Trump's supposed to be in France for the reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral, Notre Dame. Okay, either however you pronounce it. Um, and so all this unrest that's going on in France just makes NATO look like even more of a shit show, right? And so supposedly he's going to throw someone in that position before tomorrow so that, because of Trump coming. And then on top of that, you had tens of thousands of union workers that went on strike yesterday. And there's protests all across the country. And I'm like, what a shit show. And I wasn't in the heart of Paris for very long because most of where I was in the countryside. But it was just so strange to realize I was there right as this government shit show was taking place.
Well, how freaked out were you when you see all of these vehicles with their lights on? Like, I would have been thinking, like, oh shit, the war has started.
I was just like, my first thought was like, wow, they have more resources than LAPD. I'm like, I wonder where they're going.
Oh my God. Yeah, well, I would have like totally freaked out if I were you in France and seeing all of that. Um, okay, so the other thing, I feel like there's so much that I'm finding out about on this leftist side of TikTok, because the other thing that they're talking about is, get this, they think that the election was stolen. And, Russia was in on it, of course. And Trump is never going to get into office because he's going to be caught and it'll be, quote, the crime of the century. This is like literally what they're all banking on. All the people with Trump derangement syndrome, they have this whole theory. And I'm sorry, but isn't this the exact thing that they demonized conservatives for in 2020?
Yep.
I mean, remember like how the last 4 years they just kept saying that our elections are safe and secure, and anyone that dares to question it is an insurrectionist, of course, and needs to be censored. Yet here they are saying the election was stolen and it's going to come out and Trump's never going to get into office, so we don't have to worry. Like
Well,
they,
it's just like with Hillary saying the election was stolen and
yeah,
then turning around and when Trump actually says the same thing when it legitimately was stolen during the last election, but he's an election denier. Okay.
right. I mean, we couldn't even, it's not even that it was stolen. We couldn't even say that there could have been potential fraud.
Right.
Like, and we were censored. So it's just funny to me that, I mean, once again, like everything they do is it's just complete hypocrisy. But that's what they're all banking on. They really think that's going to happen. So there was that. And then, of course, the other big news was that Hunter Biden was pardoned by Joe Biden. And this was the only pardon, I guess, in history to wipe clean any crime committed over the last 10 years. Like he took it all the way to the extreme, even though, he repeatedly said that he wasn't going to pardon Hunter, but now he's pardoning him for every crime committed over the last 10 years. Like, how many crimes did this guy commit? You know,
Right.
it basically wipes clean the laptop. So he pardons him. Well, then the special counsel that was appointed to prosecute Hunter Biden for all the tax crimes, he's refusing to dismiss the case. So they went to court, and Hunter's team was trying to say, like, well, this case has to be dismissed because he's been pardoned. Well, get this. The prosecutor is citing Steve Bannon's case because Bannon was pardoned, but they moved forward with his case and threw him in jail anyway. So that set a precedent. And now that's being used against Hunter Biden. Like, how
Awesome.
freaking ironic, you know?
Yeah,
That's
it's
why,
fantastic.
yeah, I feel like all the shit they did to Trump, like, set a precedent that is going to bite them in the ass, and it's already happening. So, the other thing that's interesting is, he pardons him for everything over the last 10 years. Well, apparently it was 10 years ago that he sat on the board of Burisma, which is
Hmm.
like the whole thing where, everyone thinks Joe Biden is the big guy. So now there's lawyers that are saying that because Hunter Biden is pardoned, it could mean that he'll have to testify about who the big guy is, and he won't be able to plead the fifth. So the Fifth Amendment, it protects against self-incrimination. And so if you plead the fifth, you don't have to answer questions in a testimony. Well, if he's pardoned of all crimes, then technically he can't self-incriminate, and a judge could order him to testify. So now I'm thinking like maybe this is why the DOJ is turning around and saying that they're not going to uphold the pardon.
Yeah, this is very interesting. And like, I want to play a short clip from yesterday's Real AF episode because I think there's some more going on behind the scenes.
Apparently now it raises a new question about the Fifth Amendment loophole, right? So Fifth Amendment, that's the right that we have to not incriminate ourselves, right? People say, I plead the fifth, right? There are still people that were involved in these crimes that this dude committed, right? Joe Biden being one of them, but there's presidential immunity. But Joe Biden's brother, Joe Biden's fucking daughter, I believe. There's a few of them that are all entangled in this business. Could Hunter Biden technically testify against them because he's, safe from prosecution and throw them out? Because we have friends in these places, right? And I have somebody that's telling me that the word around the house was that Hunter Biden basically forced Joe Biden to pardon him under threat of releasing all of this shit and just coming out and saying, hey, no shit, this is what the fuck happened. Huh. So, I mean, like, and that's guys that are in, that would know, what I'm saying, that are in those fucking hallways. Yeah. I'll just say that. So it's interesting. I don't know. I think, I,
This is interesting, right? So, like,
Yep.
this whole Fifth Amendment issue could become a twist, especially because members of the House Judiciary Committee, like, I don't know if you saw comments from Rep. Andy Biggs, but he was talking about, oh, yeah, they're going to bring Hunter back for more testimony. So, like, my first thought when I heard about the pardon, I was like, this is such bullshit. Like, of course he's going to get away with it. Like, this is so hypocritical with Biden, you know, talking about how Hunter was singled out and it was selective prosecution and this is a miscarriage of justice. And I'm like, well, that's exactly what you had the DOJ do to Trump, right? Like he literally weaponized the government to go after Trump. And in his um what do you call it, speech where he talked about why he was pardoning Hunter, he was saying he believes in the justice system, right? But not in this case because they're going after his son, right? So I have to play this clip of KJP, okay? Because she was questioned by the press and it sounds like she is about to lose her shit. It's kind of a long clip, and I hope you can hear it clearly because she's on Air Force One while she's doing this whole press conference. And so, but she's getting like railed. So listen to this.
Made this decision.
So, Karine, when the president says that the justice system is infected with politics, how deep is the rot? And how much of the blame does the president take on himself for the fact that his own Justice Department, his appointees, have allowed it to get this bad?
And I'm going to get to your answers, but I do want to just share a couple of things from, for example, former Attorney General Eric Holder said, no U.S. attorney would have charged this case given the underlying facts. After a 5-year investigation, the facts as discovered only made that clear. Had his name been Joe Smith, the resolution would have been fundamentally and more fairly a declination, pardon warranted.
Former U.S. Attorney to the Eastern District of Michigan, Robert McQuaid, said, pardon of Hunter Biden is the best interest of justice. Based on the facts, most federal prosecutors would have declined to charge him. The botched misdemeanor guilty plea and sentence of the diversion were a tell that the special counsel had the same assessment. One more. Former Deputy Chief of the Criminal Division, Southern District of New York, said, as SDNY Criminal Division Deputy Chief, I was responsible for approving charges and non-prosecution requests. I wouldn't have approved Hunter Biden's tax or gun cases if Hunter's last name wasn't Biden. I don't believe he would have been charged. His pardon is justified. And the president says it. I'm going to pull out his statement. To your question, and this plays into what I just read with the SDNY Deputy Chief, which is, look, there was a deal on the table, a carefully negotiated plea deal agreed to by the Department of Justice, unraveled in the courtroom with a number, this is the president's voice, with a number of my political opponents in Congress taking credit for bringing political pressure on the process. Had the plea deal held, it would have been a fair, reasonable resolution of Hunter's cases. This is the president saying
Yes, he's saying his own Justice Department is broken, Doreen.
he believes he believes in the Justice Department. He believes that there
After
was
saying all that, he believes in the Justice Department.
this is his words. He said this. This is the president saying
He
this.
said it's infected with politics.
I said I would not interfere with the Justice Department's decision making. I kept my word, even as I have watched my son be selectively and unfair
So
prosecuted.
how deep is the rot? How many selective prosecutions are there at the DOJ?
What I can speak to is this particular case, which is Hunter Biden, who has the last name of the president, who I just said there were political opponents who were very clear and very vocal about going after his son. And I just laid out, and there's more, multiple people who are part of that system, right? Who have either worked in the justice system or currently do so. And they have been very clear on how they feel about this particular case, the cases against Hunter Biden.
So can other
The judge was also clear in this case. The judge said it wasn't political pressure when it came to the plea deal. He said this was a process issue, that you basically had two agreements in one, and that you can't have side deal. There were basic questioning in this case that both lawyers could not really answer the questions of. So the president, his statement, is he not undermining the judge and a judicial system that he promised would be independent? Just this case did not say it was political pressure.
And I just talked about an SDNI Criminal Division Deputy Chief who said he was responsible for approving the charges and not prosecuting requests. I just also quoted him and what he said, right? And there are others who have said, former White House counsel said, if I were his White House counsel, I would encourage him to pardon his son. The clemency power has few limitations and certainly would extend to a Hunter Biden pardon. Former Watergate Assistant Special Prosecutor Jill Weinberg, this was one of those cases that called out for clemency. Hunter Biden, first of all, would not ever be prosecuted for the gun crime, but for his last name. Hunter has now been sober for many years, and this is a time when it is really appropriate to grant a clemency. Look, the president, wait, two things could be true. The president does believe in the justice system and the Department of Justice. And he also believes that his son was singled out politically. And this is what we saw over and over and over again over the last couple of years. And when his deal, that fell apart, which the president said in his statement, he thought would have been fair. The president said this, and that the Department of Justice agreed with. He said if that had gone through, he believed it would have been fair. When that fell apart, his own political opponents just continued to revel in it. And one of the reasons the president did the pardon is because they didn't seem like his political opponents would let go of it. It didn't seem like they would move on. And so this is why this president took this action.
Is the president seeking the resignation of the Attorney General?
Yeah.
She's losing it.
Yes, like she was scrambling and just kept repeating herself. And those are valid questions.
Well, yeah, and if this is all about the gun charge, why didn't he just pardon the gun charge? No, he did all crimes because we know it's so much deeper than the gun charge. And
Yeah.
he's just making the whole left look like a bunch of hypocrites now because exactly what Trump has been saying about this justice system apparently it's true.
Yeah, exactly. And what's even crazier is like now you have all these progressive leftist whack jobs that are calling for Biden to just start pardoning everybody, okay? So Representative Jamal Bowman, remember this guy? Like I don't even know why he still has a job. This was the guy that pulled the fire alarm because he was trying to stall a vote in Congress last year when there wasn't an emergency. Well, this guy wants Biden to pardon all the inmates on death row, and so does AOC. Then we have Rep. Ayanna Pressley, who wants Biden to pardon hundreds of thousands of people that she says are being mass incarcerated in the unjust legal system. We have Rep. James Clyburn saying Biden should preemptively pardon Liz Cheney and special counsel Jack Smith. And people are saying he should pardon Robert Mueller, General Mark Milley, Adam Schiff. But it's like, have any of these people even been prosecuted for crimes? Like,
Nope.
no. And so it's just crazy, but it sounds like he could be doing all of these pardons because KJP was asked in another press briefing if Biden was going to pardon anyone else. And she said, quote, he's thinking through that process very thoroughly. You could expect more announcements, more pardons and clemency at the end of this term, end quote.
Well, a lot of Democrats are not happy with him right now because
Mhm.
everything they've been complaining about with Trump, he's now he's showing that Trump was right all along. And
Yeah.
so it's making them look just worse and worse and worse. So I say let him keep going because this is hilarious to watch KJP squirm.
Yeah. And just meanwhile, speaking of Biden, in case you're curious, like, you know how we continually talk about how he is just wasting as much taxpayer money as possible before he leaves office? Well, he's not done. Okay. So this week he's been in Africa and he's there because of like they're redeveloping a railway system and we've pledged $1 billion to help build this railway system. Do you want to know why, Stephanie?
Why?
Because this railway is in the Libido corridor and it's going to connect mineral mines in Zambia, the Congo, and Angola. And all of these mines are critical for producing EV batteries.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then while he's at this conference, and this is a small conference, right? It's like six or so, 7 people sitting around a table. This is not like a big meeting. It's a small group of leaders. And the president of Tanzania is speaking. And Biden literally falls asleep for 2 minutes at the table. And there is video footage all over the internet where he's just passed out, like with his hand on his head in his hand and his finger over his eye. He's just taking a nap while this
And
guy's
we're letting
talking.
him spend all
Yes.
this money. And like, my question too is like, how can you just give $1 billion? Doesn't Congress have to approve that? Like, what the hell?
Unless it's an executive order, like what the fuck is he
Jeez.
doing, right? Because remember we talked about how the Biden admin is rushing to review all these applications for billions of dollars in green energy loans before he leaves office.
Yep.
Well, that number just since last month, it was 303.5 billion. It is now up to over 324 billion. And I don't know if I mentioned this when we did that episode, but the DOE Inspector General released a report last month showing how the Loan Programs Office, their spending authority, get this, it went from 17.2 billion in 2021 to over 402 billion under Biden's leadership. And this is all for these failed green energy projects and, the failed Inflation Reduction Act. And like, I hope these are some of the first programs that the Doge like immediately gets rid of. And then right before we hop on this podcast, I see this article from the Washington Times, and there was an undercover video that was just released by Project Veritas where it said the EPA has been funneling billions of dollars to climate change organizations as fast as possible just to spend all this money and get it out the door. Another effort to spend all this money is taking place in the Commerce Department. And this actually comes from Politico. And they're saying the Secretary of Commerce doesn't want to leave any cash for Trump. So they're just like spending as much as possible. And again, this is all our tax dollars that they're just fucking wasting before Trump gets in office.
And I guarantee it's going right back in the politicians' pockets because they're
Yeah.
probably all somehow invested, or it's their buddy that owns a green company
Yeah.
that's just getting this money. Like I don't know how this isn't money laundering. Like
I
how is
know.
this legal? It blows my mind. And yeah, that's our money. Absolutely ridiculous. Now I'm fired up. Well, I think Doge is having their first meeting like today or yesterday or something. So
Okay.
I can't
Good.
wait to see what they're gonna do. We'll
Me
keep everyone
too.
posted. Okay, well, that's a lot of crazy shit you missed. I'm glad you're back,
Yeah.
and we'll keep everyone up to date. So thanks for tuning in. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday.